All right, Larry Krueger here from the Pig and a Pickle Krug Show with a little 49er video. What's the latest on Deebo Samuel? What's his market? Is he going to get traded? Is he going to get released? We'll talk about it all coming up next. But first, we're brought to you by Pig and a Pickle, the best barbecue in all of Northern California. Check them out. They're in Emeryville. They're in Corte Madera. They're open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. till 8 p.m. or until they run out. We're also brought to you by Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles, 205 Cypress Avenue in Pacific Grove, California. On the Monterey Peninsula, my friend Anthony Catania is at 831-521-5264. And we're also brought to you by Mancini's Sleep World. Mancini's is a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. They offer 120-night guarantee and a range of brands and price points. With Mancini's, you get free next-day delivery. So if all you got to do is go to sleepworld.com or go into any of Mancini's locations, and whether you shop online or visit in store, use that code KRUG10, KRUEG10, and you're going to get 10% off your mattress purchase. Again, that's KRUG10, and you'll get 10% off in store or online at sleepworld.com. Make sure you use that code KRUG10 or you won't save 10% at Mancini's, and thanks to Mancini's for being a proud sponsor of the Krug Show. All right, let's talk a little bit about one of the stories of the day. Jeremy Fowler from ESPN with the latest on Deebo Samuel. The 49ers, there was a lot of people yelling and screaming earlier this week when I said, I think Deebo's going to be traded. Oh, he's not going to be traded. Matt Barrows says he's going to be released. Okay, that's fine. But John Lynch did tell us last time we sat with him that, when he was asked specifically about Deebo Samuel, he said, we are not in the business of giving away good football players. He's got a year left on his extension, and he's not a free agent. And the 49ers would, I'm sure, like to move on from him, and he wants to move on from them. He asked for a trade at the end of the year meeting with Kyle Shanahan, and the Niners said they gave his agent a right to go shop around the league and shop for a trade. And then in the last couple days, it's come out, well, you know what? It's more advantageous to cut him on the cap and so on and so forth. And I understand all that. But John Lynch did tell us he wasn't planning on giving this player away. So I think the 49ers might be willing to take somewhat of a cap hit if they can get a decent return in a trade for Deebo Samuel. And that has been the big question. Will they get a decent return? Now, let's talk a little bit about this because Jeremy Fowler weighed in on this today from ESPN. And he said on the Thursday's edition of NFL Live, I just checked in on this being the Deebo Samuel trade talks. I was told that several teams have expressed interest, so at least preliminary talks on a potential trade have happened between Deebo, his agent, and the team. So a number of teams expressing interest is how he termed it. And if you're a 49er front office person or a 49er fan, that's probably music to your ears, because this idea that they're going to cut him loose and not get anything for him, obviously you get cap relief. But even then, it's you can look at the numbers and it may be more advantageous to keep him than to move off of him. But this is interesting for sure. Jeff Darlington said last week on SportsCenter, I don't anticipate that the 49ers will get a lot for Deebo Samuel because he's going to have to need to be extended, and it's pretty clear that the Niners will likely have to cut him if they don't trade him, so they don't really hold much leverage here. That was Jeff Darlington, and I think the common wisdom is that the Niners will be forced to trade him, but the Niners granted his agent, Tony Dandy, permission to seek a trade partner, and according to Jeremy Fowler, several teams have expressed interest in Deebo. So you say, well, Deebo's coming off a really down year where he wasn't very good. How likely that several teams are expressing interest in a player that, really was not very good this last year? And, it really comes down to a couple things. One, Deebo is a one of one. There really isn't anybody like Deebo Samuel. He does his skill set is unique. It's funny, Tim Kawakami has an article out in the SF Standard about how Deebo's exit is a sign that the 49ers have a new hardline attitude. And there's no question the Niners finished 6-11 this year, and it's time to change things up. And the Niners owe Deebo a $15.4 million roster bonus if he's on the roster on March 22nd. So most of us expect him to be moved before March 22nd. I don't think the 49ers are going to pay him that $15.4 million bonus on the 22nd of March. So that means they have basically a month to move him before they have to pay that roster bonus on March 22nd. So, you know, it's really interesting. I mean, Kawakami says the Niners have a new approach, a new attitude, that they're harder edge, that they're a little bit more ruthless on the financial side, that they're a little less forgiving on the performance side. This all comes as the Yorks are shopping 10% of the franchise for $900 million. But it's also, it's really interesting because this is the 9th year of the Lynch and Shanahan regime. And Deebo, there's been all kinds of reports around Deebo. Tim Kawakami had a report earlier that he was, his sources around the Niners say that Deebo was 20 pounds overweight during the season, and that probably led to a, subpar campaign partly. A lot of people around the Niners feel like Deebo's past his prime, that he's 29, but he's an old 29 because he's had a lot of contact, a lot of hits. Deebo's clearly frustrated with, the way last season went. He asked the Niners to trade him. It's clear that it's time for a divorce between the two sides. And this is coming from a guy that used to be a made man. This was Kyle Shanahan's best buddy. So, for a lot of people, it's hard to believe that the Niners are at this point with Deebo. He's been a captain the last 2 years. But George Kittle said it best. He says, I don't think you can replace Deebo. We have to build an offense differently. And I thought that is a really interesting quote. And there's no question about that. It's not like you can say, well, just go down to the store and get yourself a new Deebo. That's why there may be a market for him trade-wise, because he's rare. There aren't that many guys that can be a running back and a wide receiver and a return man. I personally think he's more of a return man than anything at this point. But you know what? Other teams may look at this situation and go, you know what? Deebo looked really motivated and good in that Miami game second half of the year. And maybe if we signed him, we'd get that version of Deebo. And then if that's the case, I think there's probably lots of teams that would like to have that version of Deebo. Might be other teams looking at the 49ers offensive line and going, you know what? Our offensive line is worlds better than their offensive line. We'll get him out of San Francisco and and put him behind a better offensive line, and he'll be better. So, there could be people that are still dreaming the Deebo dream. Now, for me, what do I think of him? I think he's got 2 more years left. I think if he gets in great shape, which sounds like it's a difficult thing for him, but if he gets in great shape, I think he could have one really good year. And then I think he's going to have one last year that isn't very good. So I would say he's got 2 years left. And I know people would say, how could you say that? He's only 29. Go do a study of the guys who have run through people when they get to 28, 29. They're usually done. And that's where he's kind of at. He's had a lot of hard contact throughout his career. So it is interesting. The 49ers are at a crossroads. This is an offseason for them, as Tim says, to counteract some of their faulty decisions. And, maybe not trading Deebo a year ago might have been one of those faulty decisions. Giving Ayuk a big money extension may have been a mistake. Paying Nick Bosa the bounty that they paid him, $120 million guaranteed, may not have been the smartest move. So the Niners are interesting because they want to win a Super Bowl. They had Purdy on his rookie deal, and so they went all in and made a bunch of moves to try to get that ring. It didn't happen. Now Purdy's going to get paid, and it's a whole new world. I don't know if the Purdy talks are going to be acrimonious, but eventually he's going to get paid, and he's going to get paid a huge amount of money compared to what he's made up to this point, and it's going to be harder to squeeze in guys on the roster. So the question is, the Niners are definitely moving on from Deebo. Deebo's definitely moving on from the Niners. The question was there any market for him at all? And now Jeremy Fowler is painting a picture that there is a burgeoning market for Deebo. Doesn't mean that these teams want to offer a ton, but they're going to offer something because he's a one of one. He's very unique. He's still in his, age prime. And if you haven't watched every game, you might think, you know what, this guy can still do it. Or if you just saw the Miami game, you might think, hey, man, this guy's a star. Or if you're looking at the Niner offensive line, you might say, hey, man, get him behind our O-line and he'll be way better. So the question is, how do the Niners go forward, and how do they recreate themselves offensively and replace Deebo? Well, the Deebo they had last year only had 796 total yards and 4 touchdowns. That's not hard to replace. But the Deebo that you had 2-3 years ago is very hard to replace and maybe impossible to replace. Now, Kawakami says the Niners need to add a couple receivers, one in the draft, one in free agency. I don't know that it has to go down that way. You could have signed 2 free agents and have nobody in the draft, or you could draft 2 receivers and not sign a free agent. But I agree with the general notion that they need a couple receivers if they're going to turn this thing around. CMC's got to get healthy. They've got to get some improvement in year 2 out of Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing. Ayuk has got to come back, and he's got to come back at something that resembles what he was when he left. If he comes back and he's hugely diminished, it's going to be a really hard climb. And if you look at Deebo, it's like, Deebo in Super Bowl 58, they targeted him 11 times. He had 3 catches for 33 yards. Trent McDuffie totally took him away. He had 3 carries for 8 yards. He didn't run the ball effectively at all this last year. So, that's what he was with money on the table the last time, the 49ers were standing there in the Super Bowl. So who are some players that are out there that might help the 49ers move on from Deebo Samuel? Let's hit a few. There's a few in the draft and there's a few in free agency, and they don't all play the same position because he's a multi-position guy. So I think you got to look at all the different options that are out there. One guy that a lot of people compare to Deebo is Savion Williams for TCU. He's just one of the most physical receivers in all of college football. He's 6'5", he's 225. We'll see what he runs 40-wise in Indy at the Combine. He's from Marshall, Texas. He was an honorable mention All Big 12 player this year. He caught 60 balls for 611 yards and 6 touchdowns. He's powerful. He's strong. He's 6'5", 225. He's a wide receiver, but he played quarterback in high school and has played Wildcat quarterback for the Horned Frogs. So they direct snap it to him. He runs like a running back at times. They throw it to him. I don't know what his 40 is going to be. If it's really fast, he's probably going to go on day 2. If it's really slow, he may not get drafted at all. But Savion Williams from TCU, definitely a player that if you're looking to move on from Deebo, you may want to take a look at him. One of the guys who's kind of a borderline tight end receiver is the Syracuse kid, Oronde Gadsden, the second. And if you say, why do I know that name, Oronde Gadsden? His dad played. His dad played with the Miami Dolphins, and Oronde, I believe, was born in his dad's final year with the Dolphins. He's a 6'5", 235-pound versatile weapon. He's fluid and really, really agile. Very versatile, very dynamic. This guy's a mismatch all over the field. He's a hybrid player. He can be used as a flexed out tight end. You can use him out of the slot as a wide receiver. He's got really strong hands. He's a good route runner. He's a red zone threat. He's got a big catch radius. Started out as a wide receiver and then just kept getting bigger. But if you watch this guy, he's a mismatch. He's quick into the break. He's quick out of the break. Played out of the slot a lot in 2022. He was first team all conference as a hybrid tight end / slot wide receiver role. Had a Liz Frank injury in 2023 that required 2 surgeries, so that has to be investigated a little bit. But if you watch Oronde Gadsden II, natural hands. This year he had 73 catches, 7 touchdowns, 934 yards for the Orangemen. He only played 8 snaps as an inline blocker in his first 3 years at Syracuse, but played 183 snaps there this last year. So is he an inline? Is he a tight end? Is he a jack of all trades, a joker position kind of a guy? Is he a wide receiver? Is he a tight end? Is he an H-back? What he is a really athletic mismatch who's fluid and agile with a big catch radius, and he can catch the ball going all over the field. So he's versatile. He's dynamic. Oronde Gadsden II. Now, he's a tight end, but is he a receiver? And if you're looking to kind of add a multi-dimensional player who can do a lot of different things, Oronde Gadsden in the mid-rounds might be your guy. Now, one guy, we mentioned that George Kittle said, hey, man, I don't think you can replace Deebo. We have to build an offense differently. Well, the 49ers definitely need to build up the line of scrimmage. There's no question. But there is a chance, sitting at 11, that the best wide receiver in this draft could fall right into their lap, and that's Tetaroa McMillan. They call him T-Mac. He played for the University of Arizona. Very interesting kid. He was born in Hawaii, moved to Southern California, was a star in high school, 6'5", 210 pounds. We had Ryan Fowler on the other day. He says in all the pre-combine workouts for T-Mac that he's running sub 4.4. So that's what I've been talking about. This guy's he was a basketball player. He's got a basketball background, a volleyball background. What I love about T-Mac is he's got a massive catch radius, rare ball skills, and he has this kind of attitude like every ball in the air is intended for him. He snatches it away. He high points the ball. He's a major leaper. I would say just from watching this guy play, this guy runs 4.37 with a 44-inch vertical at 6'5" and 210 pounds. Really, really fun to watch. He was Jacob Cowing's teammate 2 years ago. I asked Cowing about him. He's like, he's a freak. He was a great player in high school in Southern California. He followed Noah Fafita, who was his high school quarterback, to the University of Arizona. That's how he wound up at Arizona, because Fafita went there. He's buddies with Fafita, and I'm sure Fafita was like, dude, you made me look great in high school. How about you come to college and make me look even better? And McMillan said, let's do it. So he followed Noah Fafita to Arizona. The Wildcats line him up both outside and in the slot, and he is a run-after-the-catch monster. He's got run-after-the-catch ability. Once he runs that sub-4.4 time in Indy, I think his value is going to skyrocket, and he's probably not going to be on the board for the Niners at 11. But receivers sometimes fall down the board. Now, for the Niners, it would be controversial because they just took a receiver last year, and they have all kinds of needs on the D-line and the O-line and linebacker, and they've got all kinds of needs. But they also don't have that number one receiving weapon. Kittle's 30. Ayuk's coming off major surgery. Deebo's on the verge of being traded. Pearsall and Cowing are question marks. JJ's a possession guy. They don't have an A.J. Brown. They don't have a Tyreek Hill. They don't have a true number one receiver. And if you want to help Brock Purdy out, going to get this guy might really be the way to do it. I mean, this guy's got ball skills that are as good as almost anybody I've seen. And the catch radius is massive. And he's a leaper. I mean, he's a big leaper. He's a big red zone threat. He attacks the football in the air. And he's just like, that's my ball. My ball. I mean, seriously, Tetaroa McMillan's the real deal. So if he falls to 11 and you really want to change up your offense, you might be able to change it right there with Tetaroa McMillan. Really intriguing player and the best wide receiver in this draft. Now, the other guy who might even be a more natural fit for, replacement for Deebo Samuel is Luther Burden III, the wide receiver from Missouri. He's 5'11". He's 210 pounds. He's rocked up, man. He's pretty solid, right? And he is even more dynamic run after the catch than McMillan. Burden is like 2 steps and gone. I mean, they throw him quick slants, he's gone. They throw him screens, he's gone. He's 0 to 50 miles an hour in like 2 steps. They can throw him hitches, they throw him short stuff, and he makes somebody miss, and he's gone. He's incredibly dangerous out of the slot. Some people compare him to Anquan Bolden, but with better speed. He was a 5-star high school player coming out of East St. Louis High School in East St. Louis, 71 receptions and 20 touchdowns as a senior in high school. He also had 21 punt returns and 8 touchdowns as well. He's a killer punt returner. In 2022, he had 8 touchdowns and 1 punt return touchdown. 2023, first team All-SEC, 86 catches, 9 touchdowns. He's got a compact, powerful frame. He's explosive, and he's got the long speed to get vertical. 2 steps, he's full throttle, hyper elite short area twitch. I mean, it's really impressive. Physical, competitive player, Luther Burden III. And most likely he's on the board for the Niners at 11. And they probably could trade back to 15 and still get Luther Burden. And I don't know that they want to go wide receiver in, back to back in round one on back to back years. But man, if you're looking for a dynamic, guy who's going to wind up being the best weapon on your team potentially, Luther Burden and T Mac are going to be staring you in the face potentially right there in the first round, and that's going to be a tough call. Now, if you want to wait, there are a couple other guys in the draft that I think are also worth looking at. The Niners met with Rock Taylor, a wide receiver from Memphis, who's 6'3", 215 pounds. I watched him in the Frisco Bowl against West Virginia light it up. He caught 5 balls for 116 yards. He's a big physical receiver. Caught 66 balls this year for 950 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's from Oxford, Alabama. He's probably going to be a day 3 pick. But remember that name, Rock Taylor, R-O-C Taylor. Couple other guys that could fit that Deebo mold. There's a guy named Isaac Tesla. I know that's an unbelievable name. And I may be butchering, but it's Isaac Tesla, T-E-S-L-A-A. He's a wide receiver from Arkansas. And his dad played wide receiver at Hillsdale. He started at Hillsdale, transferred to Arkansas, academic honor roll, 4.0 GPA in high school, 6'3", about 215 pounds. In the Liberty Bowl, I watch all these bowl games. This guy in the Liberty Bowl caught 3 balls for 107 yards, and Arkansas beat Texas Tech. And he's a big, physical receiver who, can kind of do a bunch of different things. Kind of almost looks like a smaller version of a tight end. But Isaac Tesla could be a day 3 pick. Jacoby Jones, the wide receiver from Central Florida, 6'3", about 230. He's an interesting player. And then there's a couple tight ends that might even fit the bill, and that's Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end from Bowling Green, who blocks well, but he also catches well. He's a little shorter than the ideal tight end at like 6'2", 6'3". But, man, the production is off the charts, and this guy's a hell of a receiver. The other guy is Colston Loveland from Michigan. Obviously, people like Tyler Warren from Penn State, but Warren's a bigger, slower guy. Colston Loveland is more like a Kelsey. If you want to add a Travis Kelsey type player, maybe you add a Colston Loveland and take some of the burden off of the wide receiver position and, maybe run 12 personnel a little bit more with 2 tight ends, and you go Kittle and Fannin or Kittle and Loveland. It's an idea to try to diversify your attack. And then there's the free agent market. And there's 5 guys that really you may want to look at in free agency. And I don't know that any of them are going to cost a lot, but all these guys potentially could help replace Deebo Samuel. One is Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore got hurt this year, but, Shanahan always loved him when he was with Arizona. He finished this year with Atlanta. Rondale Moore ran 4.29 coming out of Purdue. He's short. He's compact. He's kind of a running back. He's kind of a receiver. He's kind of a return man. He's kind of a jack of all trades, but with sub 4.3 speed. And, he could be a better version of Deebo, a faster version of Deebo. That's a guy to look at. If you're looking for somebody who's more of a power threat, I suggested Najee Harris. That would change what the Niners do. Maybe you start using Najee more of the backfield and you flex out CMC and you use him more as a receiver. And now you have CMC as a receiver, not taking the punishment, but you have Najee, to kind of punch it in. If you don't like Najee, how about Kenneth Gainwell, who can catch the ball out of the backfield and do a lot of nice things for Philadelphia? I thought Gainwell has been a key guy for the Eagles as in their efforts to win games the last few years. He's really solid. I mean, solid. He can catch the ball. He can run it. Breaks tackles. Really interesting. 2 other guys that I think also could fit the Niners as far as replacements for Deebo. One would be Christian Kirk, who signed a big monster deal with Jacksonville and then, had a good first year and then had some injuries. But Christian Kirk can really run. You're talking about a guy with, 4.4 speed. He's got good size, tackle breaking ability. He has had a couple disappointing years in Jacksonville, but, you can get him for basically nothing in free agency. And a guy like that gives you a different look and adds another veteran receiver to your receiving core. And then the last guy I'll throw out to you guys as somebody, if you're looking to turn the page off Deebo, Tommy Tremble. Tommy Tremble, the tight end for Carolina, who played at Notre Dame, who's kind of an H-back, fullback, tight end hybrid. But he can catch the ball. He's smart. He's aggressive. You can use him in a lot of different ways. A guy like Tommy Tremble could go a great distance to helping the Niners replace Deebo Samuel. So there you go. A little breakdown on the story of the day, which is Jeremy Fowler saying that there is a trade market for Deebo. So it won't be a situation where nobody wants him. I mean, there's a lot of teams that want him, and it's a matter of what will the Niners get. I still don't expect them to get more than a day 3 pick, but maybe they'll get a 4th round pick. I was thinking it's a 5th round exclusively, but if you do have a bunch of teams interested, maybe there was a team out there where they'll give you a 4th round pick. If they get anything more than a 4th round pick, I'd be shocked. I'd be absolutely shocked. But I'll tell you, a lot of the names that we just talked about here are names that could change the Niners dynamic quite a bit. I mean, you move on from Deebo Samuel, you lose a premier guy for sure. But man, if you can turn around and replace him in the draft with Tetaroa McMillan or Luther Burden, Savion Williams in the middle of the draft, you might actually wind up better for having moved on from Deebo, especially if you go for one of those first-round receivers. I mean, Tetaroa McMillan and Luther Burden are big-time players and would wind up being, huge players for the Niners. Now, do the Niners have the guts to go back-to-back first-round wide receiver? We'll see. We'll see. But there's no question that those two guys, McMillan and Luther Burden, very, very special. All right, that's going to do it for us. Thanks to Pig and a Pickle for being the title sponsor of the Krug Show. Thanks to Sharp Corner Sports Cards and Collectibles for sponsoring this video as well. And thanks to our friends at Mancini's. And once again, if you want to save 10% on your mattress, go into Mancini's. Tell them you know Larry Krueger. Use the code KRUG10, KRUEG 10. And you're getting 10% off of your mattress purchase. That means if it's $5,000 mattress, you're going to save $500. Again, Krug 10, and you'll get 10% off at any of Mancini's locations or online at sleepworld.com. And thanks to all of you guys for supporting The Krug Show on YouTube.